As time moves forward, as technology changes and grows, as the infrastructure of companies continue to ebb and flow, one thing remains the same. A leader has to produce. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast, a transformational leadership approach that's centered around three core concepts: vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. On this show, you'll learn how to be open and honest with yourself and with others, while also developing trust, empathy, and respect within your team. You'll learn how to empower them to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. And now your host, Edward E. Mosley Jr.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Edward E. Mosley Jr. again for another episode of the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. And we have another great episode and a great guest today. We'll bring him on stage. His name is Chris Duprey, and we're going to get him to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about his business and what he thinks leadership is all about. So let's get it going.
All right.
Hey, Chris, you there?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Cool, man. Let's go, man.
All right. So the real short version, I was an infantry officer in the Army. I fell out of airplanes, commanded the 82nd, got out and ran some businesses. And today I help folks have breakthrough conversations, right? And so just listening to your intro got me all fired up, because to do that, you have to be all the things that your transformational leadership approach has, right? But as I think of leadership, I would say it has changed for me over the course of my time. And today, if I was to define it, the first thing that I would say to leaders is leadership isn't telling folks what to do. It's helping them figure out what they need to do, right? It's helping them discover those things. And to do that, we have to be curious. We have to be others focused. And we have to ask great questions and know that while we may have solved it before, we need the person that we're talking to, the person we're leading, the person that we're trying to help grow and develop needs to figure those things out for themselves if they're truly going to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm actually excited also that I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I did some time in Desert Storm, combat action ribbon, 22 years, and to hear that you're infantry, former infantry officer, jumping out of helicopters and airplanes. I know I'm glad for this conversation, because I want to bring in, I like to call it leadership in chaos. I think that's one of my starting blocks of leadership. I was a corporal, and I was driving the Humvee for our battalion commander, battalion sergeant major, as we were going in Desert Storm at that time. We just left, and we were, so what the engineers did was created a pathway for us to go through, because they had landmines. Yeah. And here I am, this E4 driving this vehicle, and my colonel is like, all right, Mosley, I know you want to just go left or right, just kind of kill us, don't you? I'm like, wait a minute, sir. I'm trying to focus here. In leadership, we got so many things going left, right. We got stuff in front of us. It is crazy. And to be able to, as veterans, to be able to bring our military experience into corporate America and to lead in chaos, and just I like what you said, others focused. Tell me more about that. Talk more about it.
So as we were developing our communications framework, it's a funny story. So we were about to film a course that we have that teaches breakthrough conversations, and we were sitting there, we're like, we need one of those compass things, man, like Kim Scott has for radical candor. And we were like, so we sat there and we drew it up on a whiteboard. And what we drew is a north-south axis, right? And at the top we put them, and at the bottom we put you, meaning we're focused on the person, the audience. We're focused on our audience, helping them, or in our communication, we're focused on getting our own thing. Mm-hmm. Then we drew a left-right axis. On the right, we put asking. On the left, we put telling. Call that the spectrum of curiosity, right?
Okay.
And so if you think about when you communicate with others, are you trying to help them achieve the thing? Or are you trying to have your own outcomes met, right? Mm-hmm. So if we think about leaders, and I'll start with the worst, right? So that bottom left, they're in it for them, and they don't ask any questions. We call that the dictator, right? And we've all met that person, that leader that's just like, do what I said because I said so. And you don't really understand why. They're just telling you what to do and you do it, right? So think of in Glengarry Glen Ross when it's like coffees for winners. That person, definitely a dictator, right? Then when you go over to the person that asks questions but is doing it for themselves, that's the lawyer. That's the manipulator. That's the one that's trying to get you to think that you're figuring out for yourself, but you're not, right? Okay. Just like an attorney trying to do a cross-examination. Then we get to our others-focused folks, Edward. And the one that tells people but cares about you and is trying to help you, they're going to tell you, hey, when I was in your shoes, this is exactly what I did, right? We call them the instructor. Then you've got the pathfinder. They're there for you, the audience, and they're there to help you discover the things for yourself, right? If you've watched Ted Lasso is a great example of a pathfinder. It's so clear that he cares about his teammates or his team, and he helps them see the things instead of just telling them what to do. And so as we did all this, it's like, boy, it's really clear when you are others focused, you build teams. When you're others focused and you ask questions, you build more leaders. When you are you focused, you build a bunch of yes people that probably don't care about what's being done, and they're looking for other jobs somewhere. But when you're a pathfinder, those people will do anything to keep growing, to keep helping build. And that's where you get breakthroughs in your business and in your personal life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. And if you can't tell, like that's the thing that I'm super passionate about.
And I'm gonna tell you why it's so interesting, because it's a simple, human-oriented, caring, compassion, empathetic, sympathetic approach. It's just caring about other people.
Yeah.
And I had a mentee ask me Wednesday. It was probably a group of about 8 in there. Mm-hmm. And younger. So I mentor some middle school and high schoolers, right?
Okay.
And one of the students asked me, he said, "Are you rich?" And I said, "In some aspects, I'm rich, but it depends on what what you're asking me." He said, "Well, you have a lot of money?" I said, "I'm not going to answer that question." He says, "Well," and as he's going on, I said, "Okay, well, just kind of ask what you want to ask, you know." And he said, "Well, you seem like you're rich and you have a lot of stuff, big house, big mansion or whatever." He says, "But why would you give us all this information? Normally people at your level don't don't reach back. They don't talk to people that are lower them or underneath them. And it just struck me as odd as here this 14-year-old, 15-year-old has this thought process. But when I also look at it from the perspective of leaders in the C-suite that may be in silos, or those that may have made this, 8-figure, high 6-figure kind of salary, and you talk about the authoritative type leader, that mentality is 180 years old.
Yeah.
And our organizations are not operating in this modern environment in that style.
Yeah. I mean,
so why are we stuck there? Why are we stuck there?
So,
Okay,
okay, that's a great question.
Matter of fact, why are we going back there?
Yeah.
Post-COVID, why are we going back there?
Okay. Oh, I love this question. So we're stuck, or we're regressing to this.
Yeah.
Because with everything that's there today, right? With the pace of everything, for some reason, I hear the phrase, it's just faster if I tell them what to do. It's just faster if I do this. So there's this component of time pressure, right, Edward? Where people are like, I just have so much stuff to do. When an employee or a teammate comes to me, I just answer whatever they got and I move on. What we fail to realize is if you add up how many times that employee comes to you to ask you questions because you've created a dependency on yourself, you've wasted exponentially more time than if you sat down and had a real conversation, right? So that's the initial thing. The second thing is it's really, really hard to not be self-focused. And I hate saying that, but it is. Especially when in your brain, you're like, I know the answer. I know how to help them. But the reality is they're not ready to just hear what you have to say. Right? So I did this activity today with a group. This is a group of managers at a pretty cool company. And they're all over the country. And so I'm in Zoom here. And we were just doing this activity, role playing, that I was one of their staff who's a college kid who seems like unmotivated, isn't hitting their leasing numbers, all this stuff. I was like, I just want you to get to the root of what's bothering me. Everybody started with a very loose question. Like, hey, how are you feeling? And we all know the first answer is okay or fine, right? And if they got a step deeper, the next thing that they all did was try to solve it for me. So it was like, well, is there anything that I can do? And so I had to stop them several times because they automatically went to fix it. Because it's difficult for people to sit in the discomfort of, I know something's up, but I got to help you get there. It's so much easier to just say the thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help the other person. It's actually selfish for us to just go try to solve it for the other person. And if we think about partnerships with like significant others, the last thing that your wife or husband wants you to do when they're telling you something is tell them how to solve it, unless they've asked you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But yet at work, we do that. And so I think it all falls back to it's easier. It's easier, and nobody's been taught how to sit with the discomfort, how to ask the right questions, and how to follow through in a way to actually transform their audience, right? Their audience being an individual, a team, or, a company.
You made a statement earlier, and I think it was a really good point. And I actually hear this and see this often when I talk to leaders. And I've seen that a lot of organizations do not have a succession plan.
Oh, yeah.
They talk around it. They're scared to build one for whatever reason. And I know some of the reasons. But the statement, the phrase you said was, have you created a dependency of you?
Yeah.
And that just goes right to the crux of, I had a senior executive tell me in a session that he didn't he didn't believe in sending his employees to personal development or any kind of professional development, because if he did, he knew they would leave the organization when they get back.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here like, okay, you brought me in to help your organization, but the problem, 90% of the problem is you.
Yeah.
It's your mentality.
Yeah. And a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And 100%. So I got lucky, right?
Mhm.
So I was in 1st Brigade of the 82nd, the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and I was a deputy planner in Afghanistan. And my boss, the planner, guy named Adam Barlow, he's a colonel. He's still in, Colonel Adam Barlow. He was my mentor, still is, like, love this guy to death. And right before I took command, he said to me, brother, you're going to get this pit in your stomach when you delegate enough where you feel sort of nauseous. That's
Yeah.
when you know you've actually delegated enough. And that stuck with me because it was like, don't tell your platoon leaders exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Make them figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did when I was a company commander, and it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a really good pose of hand in my pocket where a staff sergeant would yell at me, holding a mug of coffee, being like, all right, boys, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't micromanaging my company.
You almost have to you have to almost let people fail.
Yes,
You have to give them the space
yes,
and the security to fail.
yes,
So they will learn from the mistakes.
yes.
But if you always do it for them, they'll never have that courage to even try anything.
Yeah, I like to call this the difference between compliant and committed.
Okay.
Right? So I can tell you to do stuff and you can do it.
Mhm.
And the best you're ever going to be is compliant. So I told you how to do this thing, you went and did it. You came to me for answers, I told you what to do, you did it, compliant. If I help you see what you need to do and you keep growing and you start figuring stuff out and you build some confidence, now you're going to be committed to the thing that we're doing together.
Yeah.
And committed teammates are what win. No matter where you are. If you think about like a football team, a compliant football team, everybody's out for themselves. It's actually probably better in basketball. My kid, my 11-year-old son played basketball last year, and it was a bunch of compliant kids listening to the coach, but everybody, when they got the ball, they were the biggest ball hog, wanted to
They
do
wanted
everything
to shoot.
themselves.
Everybody wants to shoot.
Horrible, horrible. Football team this year, right? 11-year-old playing tackle football. And his coach, they had this saying. It was like, great day to be a Falcon, great day to be alive. That was what they used to say. It was so great. But what they did was, if somebody started acting like a hog and not part of the team, they just started to run. And boy, did those boys get committed to working together as a team. And they had success. Group of 11-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were committed behind what their coach wanted and behind helping each other out. And it was a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah.
But too often we get leaders that just want compliance.
Yeah.
And
It's
we have to change that.
It's almost like they want to be the smartest person in the room.
Yes.
They want to be the A personality, and they hire B or C personality people. And I asked this one leader one day, I said, he was I want to say he was a senior VP of one of these, big magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I said, how did you get a seat at the table? And he told me his path. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you stay at the seat of the table?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, he gave me an answer. And he says, honestly, I don't want to stay at the table. I want to bring people on that will allow me to leave the table. And that type of mentality is far, far in between. You don't, you don't get those, those transformational or those type of leaders that really want the team to succeed all the time.
So
You know,
I see that, and I think that it is. I want to be a little optimistic and say I don't know that it's that they don't want to, but I don't believe that they have the awareness to see the blind spots that they have
Hmm.
that has gotten them to hire people that are just going to be yes people, right?
So Chris, like, and I get you, I get that point, and I try to be as open. I try to reverse engineer stuff and just try to,
Yeah.
but I don't get that. I don't get that they're at this level of success
Mhm.
and they're sitting here. Now I understand the concept of potentially leading in a silo. You are not attached to the organization. I get that.
Mhm.
But now, and then coming from a military perspective, I do understand the fact that there are some things that the XO and the sergeant major will not allow the old man, the commander, to. He doesn't need to know that. We're going to fix it before he gets there, right? Before he
Sure.
gets to him. And there's some things that we just got to tell the CO, right?
Yeah.
But I don't believe that CO is naive to the point that he just doesn't know what's going around
Yeah.
the organization.
So
He just can't. I just don't get
feel
that.
you. I feel you. So there's this book, and I cannot think of the book that this story is in. But it was when this is probably in the 80s or 90s, one of the US made car companies had a CEO change, right?
Okay.
And they were getting crushed. I at some point I'll think of the book, and if I can remember it, I'll send it to you. It tells the story, but they were getting like they were losing money. Like things were not good. And in his first like meeting with all of his division leads or whatever they called like the presidents of each thing, everybody but one said like everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
And the one guy was like, no, we're getting our asses kicked over here
Right.
with this, da, 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 da. But it was a room full of senior executives that were afraid to tell the old man what was going on. And so this guy fired everybody else and kept the one guy that told the truth. But I think that that is a systemic thing that has happened for a lot of folks is whether they did it intentionally or we have not trained and empowered people on their staffs to speak the truth or to understand how to present things correctly. There are tons of I mean, you see this as a coach, right?
Yeah.
You might be the only person that tells somebody what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so they might see hints. This is that self-awareness piece is they don't know the root cause, and that the root cause is that they come in and dictate everything, which then makes everybody simply compliant. And so compliant people, if you're just compliant and you're just there for the paycheck, Edward, are you going to ask the boss the tough question? Are you going to challenge your leaders? Probably not. But if you're treated in a way where that's the culture, where we
Yeah.
question everything, where we dig in, that's where you get these transformational organizations.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I'm currently in my kind of midway point, a little bit over my midway point of a doctoral degree in strategic leadership. And one of the things that was a deciding factor for me to go down this path was I wanted to learn new technology, new terminology, new business nuances of what's going on. And one of the things that I have found has been very interesting to me is everything started, to your point, everything started, years ago where we're working in the factory for 40 hours, 50 hours or whatever, 9, 10 hours a day. Everything is authoritative, everything is situational. I'm telling you what to do, I'm leading from top down.
Yeah.
And now we've moved into this more modern, and we can even say pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. We've moved into this new modern type business environment to where if leaders are not kind of allowing employees to feel valued, to feel a part of the team, kind of this lateral, bottom up, middle up approach to leadership, we are not going to. Some companies are not going to be able to be successful the way they operate. We've seen a lot of. I think I read a Pew Research study where 75% of organizations are going back to a top-down style leadership. That is crazy. When we know now with technology, we can do 99, probably, let's just say 80% of our work can be done either virtually, in some form of mixed hybrid, not physically in the office. You know,
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. I had a supervisor in a session tell me that the reason he didn't like hybrid or remote work was because he found out that some of his employees were walking the dogs or they were watching kids while they were at home. And I'm scratching my head like, okay, are you married? Are you single? Do you have kids? Do you even care? Because daycare, no matter where you are, is probably anywhere from $400 to $1,000 a month for a child.
Yeah.
And so if you have two, let's just say 2 kids, that could be $2,000 a month. You got to get them on the bus, off the bus, before school, after school. So I said to him, I said, why do you care if your employee is giving you superior performance? You're giving them bonuses, constant bonuses. If their child is in the background or they're watching why do you care? Well, according to this, you're not supposed to be doing daycare or personal. I'm like, come on, wow. You got to get over this.
So again, somebody that's like compliant to the rules and thinks that the rules are more important. But so as I hear that story, it's like they don't trust their people. Right?
But on a scale, on a performance level scale, if 1 is subpar, 3 is average, and 5 is above, they were giving them 5s.
Yeah. I mean, that is a, I don't know anything about this human, but it's like there is, I mean, we used to call them old wives' tales, right? Like it's an old wives' tale that in the office is more productive. Now, I say it that way because in some organizations, in some jobs, that's 100% better. If you're a creative, being together with other creatives, working on a brand strategy, working on campaigns, that's better than being in Zoom. But if you're a sales professional that's making, 5 or 6 sales calls a day, and you're shouting like I am right now all day long, nobody wants you there.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that when we paint with a large brush, we color outside the intention of everything. When we paint with a fine toothbrush and look at the specifics, like that's when you can get into, I think that's the beauty of coaching, right? Is that we're like, well, tell me more about that and keep going. And hopefully you get somebody that goes, boy, I don't know why I cared about that. I guess I must be stuck in my old thinking. Right? That's that's what we hope.
So let me ask you a question. And this is something that's going on right now. And I don't want this to be, this is not a political question. This is just a leadership, organizational leadership question, right? So you have a lot of organizations that were in a remote work, telework atmosphere, right? And have been for some time. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on everybody having to a mandate of everybody having to come back in the office? What are your thoughts from a strategic level view?
I think I hate this. I don't want this to sound like I'm like deflecting, but I think it depends, right?
Yeah.
So if you are, if you're a coder that works independently and not as part of a team and you're siloed, I don't know that I agree.
Okay.
If you're in a team setting and like collisions with other people help spark things,
Mhm.
then I think that's there. But I think it's every business has to look at it from their perspective,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't know that there's a blanket answer. I think if the question is, are blanket mandates that everybody has to go back to the office, what do you feel about that? I'm like, I think blanket mandates about anything
Yeah.
lack specifics and are hard. But when I think about what's the intention behind it,
Mhm.
so in that theory, if the intention is we want people collaborating more and like physically being together, I can understand that in some companies and in some industries. Um, and in others, I think if it's fear-based, like I feel like my employees are just moving their mouse every hour so it looks like they're working.
Right.
If that's your motivation, that's a trust issue
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
we could be more collaborative if we were at a whiteboard,
Yeah.
right? So my partners and I, one partner's in Scotland, one's in North Carolina, one's in Virginia. I'm here in Connecticut. We try to all get together at least once a year so that we can be around big pieces of paper and draw and like figure stuff out. But we meet really well every other week for 90 minutes, just like we're meeting right now.
Yeah.
But the work that we do is pretty individual.
Yeah.
I coach clients, they coach clients. We work on big company stuff together.
Yeah.
So I think it's all dependent.
Yeah. So
Now,
how do go ahead? No, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. The one other thing is, I also want us to think about the other side of this, which is some of these companies have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on office spaces and all these
There you go. Right.
things,
That's it.
right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there is like, if you work for a company that's headquartered in Manhattan that has made the office incredible to keep you there,
Yeah.
they like, I can see from the business owner standpoint, like, I put in $10 million to make this a great place to work. I need people there. Right. And so,
Okay, so hold it right there, Chris. Okay,
yeah,
so that part right there, right? So, okay, we spent $10 million on this building. You need people there, but when I look at stuff like I may be saving on how many times the toilet is flushed. I may be saving on the electric or the light. I may be saving on wear and tear parking. So in essence, if I bring everybody back into the office,
you could have costs go back up.
right, that costs go back up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
So
I'm just I want
it's
to acknowledge. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I'm
yeah,
not saying I totally agree,
yeah,
but I can totally empathize
yeah,
with those boards of directors and
yeah,
all those folks to say, hey, we put tons of money into this stuff.
yeah.
We don't want to just have it sit here.
And I guess the I don't want to call it the sad part of that is, but the reality of that is we have operated in that logistics infrastructure for so many years. It goes back to um, we built factories and we had everybody come into the factory, everybody go into the mines, everybody go into these buildings, and that's all we were used to.
Yeah.
And now this computer age, this digital age, in the last, let's just say 10 years, it has completely changed
Oh
the
yeah.
the opportunity, and we're still stuck in the in building mentality.
I I think it depends, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's a group of folks that's incredibly true,
yeah,
and I think that's a lot of conditioning to it.
yeah,
And then, I know plenty of companies that are the other way, and I know plenty of business owners that are clients that really want their people in the office because they really want to interact with people in a way that's not possible if you're completely remote.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, everything for me comes back to what is the driving intention behind the act?
Mhm.
Is it about me, or is it about what's best for the audience and the people that I lead?
And I
If
think
it's
that's
me focused,
yeah.
I don't feel good about it. If it is the best thing for everybody, like, or the people that I lead that can get us to where we're going, then I can get behind it.
Yeah, I think leaders have issues with that.
Yeah.
I think that because, and I have seen some leaders they struggle with, how do I go from the way I used to operate
Yeah.
to with the demographics now. This is the first time in years that we've had in a lifetime, in my lifetime, and I'm 54, that we've had all generations in the workplace.
Oh,
And so how do you go from this authoritative through now there's, I talked to some people, some aspiring leaders, some mid-level leaders, and I asked them, what's your leadership style? How do you lead? And they don't know.
yeah.
They have been taught based on based on loyalty. They were promoted,
Yeah.
and now they have some outwardly forward thinking, talented individuals that are in the organization. And you know how long they're only keeping them? Maybe
Oh,
three
not long
years.
at all. Yeah. Well, because here's what's happened.
Maybe
We
three.
promote folks that are really good at their thing, and then we don't train them at all,
There you go.
and they get overwhelmed
Yep.
because they are your stars. They have never gotten a B on anything, right? They've
There you
always
go.
hit their stuff.
Yep.
And then you add all this pressure with no supports. And yeah, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And so the idea behind, at least as I sit here and think about it, is why is it so? It's hard for people to be vulnerable. It's hard for people to see their weaknesses, their blind spots, their issues. When you bring coaches in or outsiders or friends and mentors, they help you become more self-aware because they act as mirrors to help you think and help you get there. That is what is needed today more than anything, I think, because we have this group of folks that are all about to retire.
Yeah.
And, I'm 42 and I'm running into more CEOs that are, between my age, like we are a bracket
Hmm.
almost
Hmm.
of the CEOs that are out there, from small businesses to giant ones,
Yeah.
right? And everybody's experience is different. And so the more the message can get out there
Yeah.
that being vulnerable is good, being
Yep.
authentic is good,
Yep.
being curious is good. You don't have to be right.
All
You
the
just
time.
have to show up, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and the idea of, if you want people to follow you and do the things, you have to get them committed. To do that, they have to feel heard. And what we teach in terms of active listening, of shaking our heads and going, that's crap.
Yeah.
The best way to know that you're actively listening is you ask follow-up questions that
Yeah.
apply to whatever's been said. That's how we know. And if leaders can learn that, we can change this momentum of disengaged employees at work.
Yeah.
Gallup and Gartner have been talking about this stuff forever.
Yeah. That the average leader, it takes them about 7 to 9 years to receive valuable quality leadership development. And if you're evaluating employees every year, how many employees have you affected?
Oh, it's
Over nine
horrible.
years.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
so then like everybody loves to equate the military to this bad leadership way. I got to
Yeah.
tell you,
No.
I was a little after your time, right? So I am a Iraqi freedom vet and an enduring freedom vet. But every level, like Uncle Sam paid for me to go to college, did ROTC, leadership time the whole time. Then you go to the infantry officer basic course. You learn skills, but you also see leadership and you get taught it. Then you go into your first unit as a lieutenant, and now you've got a sergeant first class who's got 15 years or 10 years of experience, and you're in charge of them, but you have to humble yourself to
Yeah.
actually learn the stuff or you're going to fail, right? But every level, you get taught leadership stuff. So
Yeah.
you're an E4, get to corporal. Well, when you hit E5, you're going to a leadership course
Yeah.
to learn how to be a sergeant, because now you're in charge of dudes or
We
dudettes.
did it. Matter of fact, when I came in, I know I'm dating myself. I went in 88, but when you became an E4, you went to NCO school.
There you go.
It taught you how to just be an NCO. And you may only be leading 3 people, but it taught you how to be an NCO. And then you went to sergeant's course, then advanced course.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the military has gotten this right. They
Yes.
teach their leaders. Now, does it produce some bad ones?
They teach the leaders before they become leaders.
Yeah, and then there's on-the-job training.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the amount of mentorship I got as a lieutenant, as a captain.
Yeah.
It is why I operate the way that I do.
Yeah. I know in a lot of federal employees, a lot of federal agencies, a good number of federal agencies, until you become a supervisor, the title of supervisor, you cannot attend supervisory type training. So they'll promote you. You can be selected to a supervisory position based on what you have done as a non-supervisor.
Right.
Then you become a supervisor, and it's all of a sudden, now you're in charge of, so many employees, and you have to write their performance appraisal, their advancements, and so on and so on and so on. And that's backwards.
Yeah, 100%.
It's backwards.
Yes. And so if we're talking to leaders and we're so there, it's, you have to develop the folks that are going to come after you. Because if you think like it's that, you ever, the idea of, well, it was really hard when I became the sales leader, or it was really hard, nobody helped me out when I was doing this. And if that's the mentality that you keep, you're not going to get what you need. We should be taking our experience, whether it was good or bad, and going, cool, how do I either adapt my style to make sure it's not that way for others? Or do I go, oh my gosh, I had these great mentors that I have too many to name. I need to go be that for all of these folks that work there. But it's about personal choice. And like, again, are we just worried about our success, or are we worried about the folks who are in our charge? And if that's our focus, we're going to be fine.
I think in essence, what I learned from my time in combat, and even hearing you talk now, I think we were trained years ago to be transformational leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can remember as an E4, I had, I was a corporal. I had maybe 8 or so that I was kind of in charge of. Then as I picked up rank, there was even more. But we would take, somebody from boot camp, and by the time that they left the service, we had transitioned them into this great leader. Now they're out into corporate America, and they're leading organizations solely based on what we were taught and what we instilled in them, we empowered in them. And that's crucial, man. So tell me about what is question first? Is that?
Yeah. So the question first group, right? We teach that compass that I described to you.
Mm-hmm.
We help folks become pathfinders.
Okay.
Right. So we have 4 pillars that are just things that if you learn them and leverage them, you're going to be more curious. You're going to ask better questions and have these breakthrough conversations. So our goal is to really just help people have these connections, right? We believe that there is a lack of connection, whether it's leaders with their people or sales folks with their buyers, right? And so our goal is to teach these folks how to have great conversations. We do it through coaching and role plays, and it's a ton of fun. And when you see folks become aware of how they communicate, again, now you have this choice, right? When you realize after you go through this activity with us that, oh my gosh, I'm the dictator. Oh, I'm the lawyer.
Yeah.
That is now ingrained. And I've got 24-year-old managers sitting there going, I caught myself going into dictator mode. And I said, no, how do I help them? Let me ask a question. And you sit back and you go, God, I can't believe I get paid to do this stuff.
Yeah. It's great that I'm hearing what you're saying, because I created a course solely based on the experience I went through from a horrible leader. I went into the building every day and I could just feel my stomach in knots. I was stressed. I was getting ulcers. I was depressed. I really did not. And it was crazy because I felt good getting up. I felt good driving to work. And as soon as I got to the parking lot, I just felt sick. And I felt that sickness the entire time I was at the job.
Yeah.
And then when I left out of the building, got into the car to leave, I felt this release.
Yeah.
And I call mine the Tammy model. And that's her name.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And so to me, it's the Tammy model, but it's, when I go out and teach it, it's called the CAR, which is your character, attitude, and reputation. How are you perceived? How do others see you? And it just goes back to what you were saying when you have some of your managers and your participants, when they say, oh, wow, am I really this authoritative person? I had another podcast, and I had a gentleman on, his name was Brian, and Brian has a course where it's the premise is about, are you the asshole leader? Or were you the asshole today? Yeah. And it's just crazy how people can. And one of the things I always ask, folks who bring me in, like, do you really want to know? Do you really want to know that you have employees that are supervisors that have these characteristics right here? These are the characteristics that are causing your high turnover rate, your low employee engagement, your toxic culture, let's talk more about that. Talk more about, some of the moments, some of the aha moments that you have had with clients and what you do when they realize.
So it just comes down to this, at least for me. They don't see it till they see it. And once you get them to see it, there's this ownership that they have to take.
Yeah.
Because my experience is it's usually the senior leaders that do not communicate well. And that then becomes the accepted level. So when we go in, right, like the first thing that we do is we do a workshop for the company or for like the senior leaders and the managers, right? We get everybody into a space and we teach our system and we make people role play and we make people uncomfortable. But then it becomes a choice once you know. So we were joking about this yesterday. One of our pillars of our framework is this thing called vanguarding, right? Best time to address the concerns before it becomes a concern is sort of the definition of that, right? So it's, some people will call it disarming, whatever, but it's how do you start a conversation when you know that there's potential exit doors that people could leave, or there's potential things that people could get defensive? Because we know when an employee gets defensive, conversation over, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's so much easier to say, hey, you might be thinking X, Y, or Z as we go into this evaluation. I really want us to focus on these things. And at the end, we're going to blah, 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 blah. And now we've removed the stress of, I don't know what's going to happen in this conversation. and now we can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one sticks. Everybody gets that after the workshop. And you start hearing that around the office. And once they start learning the other pillars and really thinking, how do I become a Pathfinder? You get organizational change started.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the stuff that we get to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
And it's just super fun.
Talk a little bit about and I know you kind of already kind of hinted on it, but talk more about, you have a CEO, senior level leader who wants to take his organization in a different direction. He sees some stuff, he sees trends, he wants to make changes, but he has some mid-level leaders that have been in place for a long time, that we have identified as the problem, right? How do you have that conversation?
Well, I mean, so if we're already at the point where it's like it's time to go, right? That might be different. But the way that we talk about this is, whenever we're going to be met with resistance, we got to get curious.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to help them unpack, why are they resistant, right? Because most people are resistant because they're ignorant to the thing, right? So what stops change is people's fear of change. Well, let's unpack all that stuff. And if I have that going on, I'm going to coach somebody to go, before you say the decision's made, go ask them what they think about the thing, and then ask 1,000 questions to help understand where they're coming from. And if you've been working with us, you're gonna get to one of three real outcomes. One, they're gonna have the outcome we want, right? Is like, oh, Chris, I know exactly what I need to do right now. This is totally the approach. We got to go do it. That aha moment, right? The second is they get super emotional and they understand that it's time for them to go.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third thing is, they've clearly painted the picture of where they're at, and now we can make a decision to go into the conversation of, hey, we care about you, but based on everything that we've just talked about, it's clear that you're not right to do this. So let's talk about that.
Do you think
but if
that
we go in, so one second, if we go in though and just tell them this is what's happening, you're going to get defensive and they're going to not want to do the thing.
But do you think that they see the problem? They're just hesitant. They're just scared because of loyalty. They promoted. They brought the person on board. They've been there for years.
Yeah. Oh, I had this conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
A guy's going to go do this other thing, and he's like, I just don't know if my sales leader is going to get on board. And I have to look at him like, so what does that tell you, man?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I guess I might need a new sales leader. He's like, you might.
Yeah.
We're going to see. And as your coach, I'm going to tell you if that's the case or not.
Yeah. So what is a bit of advice that you would tell a CEO that wants to make change, but he's struggling or she's struggling with how to implement that change? And it's people, it's his mid-level leaders that are
you have to invest. I mean, it's a simple thing. You have to invest in coaching and training for your team.
There you go.
Hands down. If you don't have a line item in your budget for coaching and training for your staff, you will only get to a certain point.
Yeah. I like that.
I mean, like that's just that's the crescendo. Companies that win spend money on their people, even if they're going to leave.
Yeah. Now, a lot of organizations have. Here's the other problem I see a lot of organizations. They invest money in their senior leaders. Once they get to that high level, that's they'll spend money.
Yeah.
But they won't spend it at their junior level or early on employees.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
I feel lucky that I get to work with a bunch of companies that are spending money at all levels.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what you have to do. If you are going to go and try to have a company that matters, a company that people love, a company that people are committed to, you can't treat different classes of workers differently. You have to sit there and go, you know, if you're like a manufacturer, you got to be educating the folks doing the work on the floor. You got to be educating the folks in product design. You got to be educating the folks in sales and marketing. You got to be educating the administrative staff, and you got to be educating the senior leaders, or you're not doing the service to the people that work for you the way that you need to.
Yeah.
And I don't have a stat to back this up, but I would say, I'm sure that there's one out there if we wanted to look for it. But I don't see training and development budgets as expenses against the thing. That's why they might fall on a P&L.
Mm-hmm.
But for every dollar you invest in your team, the output is higher.
Yeah.
Because when you have committed people, it's higher.
That's something I'm trying to do research on myself, because it's almost like it's an accepted loss that outweighs the spending on a robust training and development.
Yeah. Here's where it's simple. Sales team, one of the ones that I'm training, their close rate grew by 82% this year.
Mm-hmm. Because of coaching.
Because of coaching and training and role. So many things, right? New CRO, coaching and training program, call reviews, role plays, all this stuff. But the time and dollars they spent led to closing 82% more deals, which is equating to real dollars.
Yeah. It is that simple.
Sales is easy.
Yeah.
It is the management level where we have to look at things like employee turnover, cost of new employees, all of that stuff. But those big think tanks are doing those studies.
Yeah.
And the cost is in the billions of dollars for uninspired folks, like folks that are just showing up.
Retraining, gapped billets, you name it. Yeah.
And the beauty of what we do, we get to talk about this stuff. We get to work with these folks to hopefully make this change to where the stuff you're talking about, the stuff I'm talking about, is taught at Wharton, is taught at, the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago, like that it's taught in all these programs, right?
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't just be the few who have great leaders that bring folks in. This should be part of education.
That's going to be a hard push.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
It's going to be a hard push.
But guess what? That's the mission that we're on.
Yeah. That's a hard push.
But that's what it needs to be.
And it needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
It has to be consistent. And at some point, I think I've seen a lot of great leaders that say, you know what? I have brought the organization, I've brought this goal, this mission to the highest level that I can take it to. Now it's time for this new innovative leader to come in and be like, okay, you know what? It's your time now.
Yeah.
It's your time.
I love it, man. Yeah. This has been so much fun.
Got it, man. Hey, I really enjoyed it. Glad having you on the show, and I can't wait to get you back on, because I know we can go on and on and on and on.
Yeah, man. I love it. I will definitely come back whenever you'd like.
Cool. Well, hey, it's been a great episode of the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership with our special guest, Chris. And like I always used to say, just go out and lead with dignity, respect, authenticity, and truth. Peace.
You've been listening to the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. Edward E. Mosley Jr. has 30 years of leadership experience and is an ICF credentialed leadership coach. And it's his passion to inspire leaders who can foster a safe space where they can empower their followers to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities while sparking collaboration and creativity. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But until then, find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edward E. Mosley Jr. To contact the show, send your emails to limitlessboundsteam@gmail.com. See you next time on the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast.